Event crossover stories have the potential to be some of my very favorite comics due to Marvel and DC's big emphasis on typically unleashing these events after the middle of big landmark stories. Marvel's latest event, A.X.E. Judgment Day, has just concluded today with the final issue finally released over on store shelves. However, despite my engagement in all the material leading up to this ginormous crossover, I think this finale let me down just ever so slightly. My name is Ariko Braddock, and today let's go ahead and talk about A.X.E, Avengers, X-Men, Eternals, number 6, and talk about how kind of the event landscape of comics really pushes a story in a very kind of singularly focused editorial direction. But before we get deeper into the video, wanted to go ahead and encourage you guys to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please feel free to go ahead and hit the like button on this video. So without further ado here, I want to go ahead and just introduce everything about this comic book. Let's go ahead and read off the solicitation text. The apocalyptic finale of the event of the year. It's nothing that will be the same again. It's that unless the heroes can find a new way to be heroes, everything will be nothing forever. And now I want to go ahead and introduce our creative team for the issue. This issue is written by Gillen. The art is illustrated by Valerio Schiti and Ivan Fiorelli. We have colors from Marte, Gracia, and letters from VC's Clayton, Cowles. And what I want to go ahead and do first is just spotlight the art of this issue from Schiti and Fiorelli. First off, let me show off this gorgeous cover for the issue from Mark Brooks. Here is a look at a preview of the issue over from Comic Book Dispatch. Many thanks to them for uploading this preview of the issue so quickly. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the issue a little bit. And I wanted to start by just going over some of this artwork in the issue. The artwork is absolutely gorgeous, all the way throughout the story. I just love how Schiti is able to draw the X-Men with such kind of like a modern look. I associate this with the current run of X-Men titles over from Marvel Comics. So the fact that, Schiti has drawn so much of like this event crossover along with Fiorelli has really caused me to kind of engage with this crossover at a very deep level. And I love just the sheer amount of characters that Schiti and Fiorelli can fit on the page as well. This issue never feels bloated and kind of celebrates the large scope that the issue has overall. Despite there being so many characters on the page, Schiti does a wonderful job with facial expressions. I think maybe some of the drawbacks from Schiti can come in some of the faces. It can be difficult to draw so many different faces on the comic book page when you're primarily concerned with like getting, dozens of characters in, each page essentially. But there are so many different kind of color tones and effects for this issue. I think it would have been easy for the artistic kind of creative team to lose sight of all of the kind of individual pieces going on in the issue. But Marte Gracia's colors really kind of keep the whole package together. And I think it's, I can definitely go ahead and recommend A.X.E Judgment Day number 6 from the standpoint of the book looking absolutely beautiful and having so many interesting characters throughout the Marvel universe as a whole. But now I think it's very important for us to go ahead and just talk a little bit about some of the material in this issue overall and why maybe from a scripting standpoint I feel a little bit let down by this crossover. Kind of the entire essentially main focus of the series has been the progenitor rising up to kind of help the X-Men stop the Eternals. But once the progenitor is awakened, he's rendered a judgment onto kind of the Marvel universe as a whole. And this, I think, is where the series hit a really big plot problem, because the plot leading up to this crossover was incredibly, well thought out, incredibly dynamic. It almost had these elements of Game of Thrones as Kieron Gillen, plotted a kind of like insurrection where a group of Eternals were defying the rest of the Eternals, and then they waged a war against the X-Men. Some of it was in the shadow, some of it was in the public, but there were so many individual moving pieces that I was just enthralled with all of the material leading up to this crossover. And the first couple of issues of the crossover seemed like they were delivering on like the cat and mouse game between the push and pull of the Eternals versus the X-Men. But I just think, unfortunately, all of this material with the progenitor ended up taking center stage throughout this crossover. And some of the focus on the individual characters, I think, were lost as a result. Now, Marvel and Kieron Gillen, along with several collaborators, published tons of ancillary kind of tie-in issues to this crossover event. And some of those are good, but some of those I think kind of fall in the same trap with the plotting of the series, where essentially the progenitor renders a verdict to the Marvel universe, but it's unclear what the exact ramifications of that are. And kind of like throughout the series, it's like the tension is deflated because we go from something that's very kind of tangible to something that doesn't have clear stakes throughout. That being said, this is still a Kieron Gillen script, so you're still getting a lot of really great character beats throughout the issue. There's a great science fiction aesthetic, and I think my complaints with the crossover overall are going to be pretty nitpicky. I think one of the things that led me to realize that I didn't like this crossover maybe as much as the other material was just the fact that I think I'm more interested in so many other X-Men comics that aren't Judgment Day right now. The plotting in X-Men Red, I think, has me, looking forward to that issue immensely. I'm looking forward to kind of Sins of Sinister, which is also kind of a crossover from Kieron Gillen as well. But at the end of the day, it just seems like with Judgment Day that a lot of these individual pieces never really added up to a greater whole. Now, there's some kind of nice plot developments towards the end of the issue. Particularly the Eternals get some interesting, moments, and also they're able to reflect on some of these themes in a really fascinating way. And also, I know that I probably am not aware of all of the subtext in this story, and I know that Kieron Gillen really imbues all of his scripts with a great level of subtext. And I wonder if, like, knowing a little bit more about what his plans were would make me like this issue and this crossover, overall a little bit more. But it's a little disappointing that, some of the ramifications for Judgment Day are just kind of little nice plot developments that are happening in upcoming books. If this is the kind of crossover that leads Marvel to tell a story that takes these plot elements to give us, a really epic story moving forward, I would be really, really interested to see that. I think the artistic team did a great job, and there's a lot of little really nice character beats in this issue. So if you're really invested in all of the individual threads throughout the kind of X-Men and Eternals books, I think you're really going to want to go ahead and check out this issue. So overall here, I think this series as a whole is a little bit of a mixed bag. If you're just kind of reading the full Krakoan era of X-Men, I definitely think this is worth it. I think you should even check out the Eternals title as well, because it was so much fun leading up to this crossover. And this crossover certainly had its moments. It just isn't, I think, the greatest series of all time. But we've got a lot of things to look forward to. The X-Men are kind of moving with Spider-Man towards Dark Web. Sins of Sinister is on the horizon. And a lot of Marvel's X books are producing some of the best content over at the publisher as a whole. So I want to know from you guys, did you like this issue more than I did? What were your thoughts on, this series as a whole? And are you looking forward to kind of like me, the next upcoming developments in future X books, maybe more than this crossover. Well, thank you guys so much for coming to check out the video. Had a pleasure just giving my final thoughts on Judgment Day. I don't think it's perfect, but if you're really interested in comics, I still think it's definitely worth a read. Thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon for the next one. Bye.